have to kind of move away from operations unless that's what you're good at, unless that's what you want to do. Then you need to bring someone in that's going to be more of the face and the CEO of the company to do that entrepreneur stuff, right? Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Fit to Great Cast. I'm your host, Zach Coleman. We have a special guest today. Taylor, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself? Why don't you just go off and tell everyone a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, no problem. It's all good. So my name is Tyler Sullivan. Born and raised in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and I got a degree in college with business and fitness. Decided after school to drive around the country a little bit, all the way to Florida, to Ohio, and then back home. In between all that, had got married and had two kids, and decided to settle a little bit closer to family back in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which is kind of where I've been since 2010. And yeah, I started my studio, my CrossFit business, my CrossFit gym and affiliate back in 2011. It was always in the back of my mind to start something like this, and decided to continue to run it, and ran it alongside with just a regular job, and decided in 2012 to quit full-time job and just focus exclusively on the business. And I ran it ever since, and it sort of blew up in my face in a very good way. And yeah, all that to lead up to COVID, which I think everybody knows was a pretty rough time for gyms in general, or businesses in general. Um, and yeah, after that, grew it back up to where I needed to go, and exited the business. I made a successful sale back in last year, so 2024, almost a year to the day, and decided to sort of exit the business because I just decided I wanted to move forward with some other opportunities, and see the person who I sold it to have the opportunity as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think a good plethora of your overall story is that there's evolutionary periods in all of us, and so for people that feel trapped, like, "Hey, I can't do this, I can't do that," just knowing that, hey, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, and it's either evolving or growing. And I kind of told you a little bit about the audience before I forgot to hit record, and so why don't you dive in and talk a little bit. I wanna hear a little bit about your studio and, maybe some of the spots that you had plateau moments, how you got past those hurdles, what you've seen, to get you to the point of possibly then realizing, "Hey, I wanna sell this thing."
Sure. Well, as a hungry entrepreneur in the very beginning of any journey, everyone sort of has the glossy eyes, so to speak, right? We all are really motivated to do whatever it takes, work hard, grind hard, and oftentimes you sort of end up skipping over the things that are necessary to grow a business long term, like systems, like processes, like hiring people sooner, like marketing your gym better. You name it, it's on there. And those are all sort of things that came to a crossroads for myself after about 2 years. So in 2013, at the end of 2013, um, was sort of a huge turning point for me in my gym. It blew up in my face in a very good way. Financially, we were doing wonderful, but on the back side of things, the operations, and then of course just the operational side with personal side, being at the gym all the time, sort of going too hard too soon, or too hard too much, and not knowing how to ease off the gas pedal, created a dynamic in my gym and my personal life that said I need to either change something right now, or like in drastically, or I'm gonna have to stop this thing. And I actually contemplated shutting down the gym in the end of 2013, due to the fact that it was impacting my personal life too much, and also just I couldn't handle all the things that were happening inside. So it was at that point where I decided, well, I'm not going to stop this thing. I think I can make this thing better, and I started learning a little bit about what to do and how to get over these types of humps with some mentors of mine. Um, and I decided to hire my first person, and my first person that I hired was everything that I could not, or I didn't want or didn't need to do necessarily, but needed to be done.
Mhm.
Oh, that's right. That I didn't want to do that needed to be done. Right. So I could still focus on coaching. I could deliver a quality service and really meet the needs of the people that were deciding to come into my business. And this person that I hired ended up taking off so much on my plate that it freed me up to be with my family. It freed me up to focus on some of the major things rather than the minor things. Right. And then after that, I hired my brother, who ended up being a part of a sale in his company. And he drastically helped me with creating systems in my business. So it wasn't just taking off the busyness, it was also systematizing the business. And he was really good about the processes, and that kind of transformed the business in 2014 and forward. And that was a major hurdle, and it happened within about 3 to 4 months that we overcame, and then started to see some benefits of those changes.
Did you see that the process of creating all of those the process of creating the processes actually took longer than the actual implementation and seeing the change to those processes?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's part of it's like you don't even know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And you start to understand that like you have an idea in your head, but it's like the X's and O's on how to create that process. Like, and just knowing what is accurate and what is not is sometimes, like you said, a little bit more of a longer journey. Um, but then once you sort of refine that, it's like executing on that, right?
Mhm.
And executing on those decisions that you decided were worth it. And with the help of books, with the help of people that have been in small business before, I think we were able to pinpoint those specific processes a little bit better.
Yeah, yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but something that I see very common in the industry is, a lot of studio owners, they're owner operators. And for them to be able to kind of let go of somewhat of the operations is a first good kind of delegation on kind of going back to why they started the studio to begin with. And it's kind of a mindset shift to be like, oh, now I have to focus on tasks that I didn't even realize would move the needle, try to find and like you said, like, you don't know what you don't know. How do you get to the point where, like, for instance, and I don't know if this happened to you, but did you get to a point where you were like, I own a studio and I don't even work out anymore because I'm so focused on operations that realizing that bringing the working out back actually helped you grow the business?
Mm. Yeah, it's I think, like, knowing your strengths and your weaknesses are key.
Mhm.
And a lot of times gym owners sort of, you know, like, and studio owners, I mean, there's a hodgepodge of types of people, but, and I think a lot of people are really good at the specific thing that that gym service is all about, or the business's service, right? Like, the accountant is probably a really good accountant, right? The
Yep.
plumber is probably a really good plumber. The gym owner is probably a really good gym or coach, excuse me. And that's often what happens is you have that tactical technician type person that knows the tasks and the duties of that person or of the business, but it's the entrepreneurial or the managerial or the operational type responsibilities that a gym owner or any business owner maybe doesn't have that as a strength, and they start to try and use their tactical skills to hopefully overcome what's going on in the business, right? And that can be an issue where, businesses start to stall out as a result of that. And then
Yeah.
because for me, it was all in on the coaching part of my business. And I was really good with coaching and tactical stuff within that. But I left all the busy work and the entrepreneurial spirit within the business sort of on the side because I was just so busy. Right.
Mhm.
And I think once we start to do sort of an inventory of self, you start to understand there is hope once you know what to do and what to work on, and also what to delegate and what to get rid of.
Mhm, mhm. And just and I don't know if you use this technique, but this is something that I've continued to use myself, no matter what stage of growth I've been in, is the delegation chart. Finding out what you love, finding out what you don't love, finding out what you hate, what you don't hate. And I'll throw a link in the comments for anyone who wants to um, see that chart and utilize that chart. But just kind of sitting down every week and just saying, hey, like, what am I doing this week? And just chart it down as you're doing it. And then start writing down, like, I don't necessarily like doing this, or I need to do this because I don't have the expertise to be able to bring someone in right now. Did you use any sort of system for yourself to kind of sit down and be like, all right, how do I know what to delegate out? How do I know what to start to move away from?
Sure. Yes, I did. A primary thing first off was just again like sort of the knowledge to know that I have a problem, so to speak, right? I have to recognize that there's an issue in my business and I need to do something about it. My brother was that person. He helped me understand that, hey, this is not working, all these things, right? It was that outside perspective that sort of knocked me into place a little bit to understand what's happening. And then it was also him who decided to get me the book Traction.
Mhm.
That book was a game changer. That was essentially the thing that said, here's what Here's who you are. This is what you need to work on. And it sort of gave me that template, those resources, and the information to sort of make those changes. And I mean, we loosely followed it. We weren't hardcore traction, but it was at least the opportunity for us to recognize we have something we need to do. And it gave us that sort of pathway to go to the things and the resources that could get us to the place where we need to go, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Traction is a great book. It's definitely something that, I'm a big advocate of EOS myself, and so I uh, I utilize Traction quite a bit with what I do, and I just see, and it's funny when because it really doesn't really matter what industry you're in, right? I think the same flow happens with every business where it's like you have to kind of move away from operations unless that's what you're good at, unless that's what you want to do. And if that's the case, then you need to bring someone in that's going to be more of the face and the CEO of the company to do that entrepreneur stuff, right?
Sure.
Um, but I highly recommend Traction for anyone who's watching this. It's a great book. Now, when you kind of got through that phase and you started working on operations, let's talk
Mhm.
a little bit about, and I know this is a big thing in the industry. We talk about retention versus marketing and pre-sale, like how much effort do you put into your marketing, how much effort do you put in. What were kind of the staples that you started to look at internally? Because honestly, you know, us being a marketing company, we've noticed a lot of studio owners, they try to operate the marketing a little too much and have a little bit too much control. And from my perspective, it takes them away from the entrepreneur tasks. And so what did you see when you started delegating out and figuring out a good system for your marketing that would be beneficial for anyone who's listening?
Mm. Well, like, I mentioned earlier, it was just sort of getting the people in the place that allowed me to sort of give me the space to think about that type of stuff to begin with, you know?
Yeah.
And once I had that, um, I realized that, especially in the very early adopter phase of my business, it was a very much a word of mouth type business in the beginning, right? Because we were so new, we had such a low budget. Those types of things sort of give us, our free marketing, so to speak. But what I realized was that like the people that were wanting to come in, right, there was not really necessarily this game plan in which there was a process from, you know, this happens after this, and then something happens after that, right? I get a lead, that lead is, there's a certain point of contact that we have to have, the things that we want to say, the sales process, right? To tell them, hey, this is what we're all about. And then eventually to make the sale, right? So, I mean, we could get as many leads as we could possibly get from word of mouth, but if we didn't have the things to back up those people that were coming in the gym, we felt that it was just sort of this revolving door. And it was when I started thinking about the onboarding processes or in the sales process, excuse me, that sort of everything started to come into place where not only was the word of mouth still, it was working really well, we were converting that word of mouth. We were converting those leads that were coming into the gym. All right. And as that sort of wore off as time went on in the business, after that early adopter phase, we started kind of getting to that high growth phase. That process really came into play when we started to have to market in real, like in spending dollars and or creating systems to be able to get people into the gym, And then I think that's where it, when that was sort of ironed out at the beginning, we started to see hyper growth,
Yeah.
and that's what it's really take off.
Yeah, you were able long story short, it usually comes down to this, right? It's find something that works, systematize what works, and then expand that system if you're going to expand or blah 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 blah. And so trying to figure out where your marketing dollars are going. And and funny enough, I still see this with a lot of studios. Is that they get to a point where they do the referral stuff, and they're spending just a little bit of budget, and then once they start systematizing, they're so afraid to do advertising. They're so afraid to spend $2,000-3,000 a month, and I'm not. That's just a average number. I mean, smaller gyms I'd say start with 1,000, but that's besides the point. Like saying, hey, like this is an investment towards starting to find those leads, and honestly, trying to learn the process back to what you said with the sales is that just because you're going to get 45 people in the door doesn't mean that 45 people are going to sell.
Sure.
So, how did you go through that transition, start to come to the mindset of understanding that and really like diving into when you built the system? Because here's the thing, every single human being's different. So even with the sales process, I know there was probably a plethora of kinks that continued to happen, like, oh, this person isn't following the sales process. This person's not following the sale. So how did you let go of control to allow yourself to step outside that sales process a little bit and allow for things to happen a little bit more naturally?
Yeah, I think it was a kind of a proof of concept situation where, like I mentioned earlier, with just people coming into the gym with a free word of mouth or referral process, like it allowed that process to sort of develop and harden to a place where it was time tested with just regular people, right? And it was an opportunity for me to just use that as a practice scenario over and over and over to refine it, because it then allowed us to say, you know what, after even free people that, or the free leads that are coming in, or just the people that walk in the doors, we're converting this really, really well, right? We're doing great. But if we start to pour gasoline on this thing, we start to actually spend some money on advertising, like it freed me up and it gave me a sense of confidence and relaxation to say, you know, I'm good with what we did with everybody else. I know this works if we just get more, right?
Yeah.
It just gave us more confidence and freedom to sort of run with what we needed to do next. And that was because of the time tested process that we've refined.
Nice, nice. So what moving forward, once you started getting the operations and you started getting the systems, you got past your first plateau period. What was around the time when was there a time when you started realizing that like, hey, we have to start working on internal experiences, we have to start working on customer service to also focus on retention, or was that part of your initial system setup?
Yeah, great question. To be honest, no, it wasn't part of it. I think it was sort of when we started really pouring that gasoline on the fire, we started having the customers come in mass, that the experience afterwards mattered. So it was a little, again, kind of that catch up thing. I didn't have all the answers when this was starting, right?
Mhm.
But it was okay. We have 50 more people this month, or we have 100 more people over the course of this year, whatever it was. We wanted to make sure that this customer, we had some sort of retention process to maintain this relationship as long as possible. And it was when that was happening, when we had a lot of people, that we started to have to develop that system.
Yeah, yeah. Did you start to, like, dive into your values more, your mission and your vision when you started working on the customer service? Is that kind of something that you felt kinda helped move the needle to the next stage?
For sure. It was also because internally I needed my staff to believe in it, right?
Yeah.
And if they didn't believe in the process and the vision, the mission of what we were doing, like, I mean, all the processes and systems in the world wouldn't have mattered. They wouldn't have executed them because I'm only one man and I can only do so many things, right? Back to what we were talking about, delegating those specific tasks. I was focused on the entrepreneurial side. I needed my operational people to do the job.
Yeah.
And so it was very important. So it was kind of, again, a catch up situation. We, back in 2016, had to develop mission and vision. I wish I would have done that earlier, right? But, you
Mhm.
know, it is what it is. And once we started getting people in my business to start to believe the system, believe the gym, believe the process, excuse me, then they could believe the system. And that's when, you know, getting this thing to be believed and executed by my staff was critical, right? Because now we had the retention process, we had the nurturing process of the client and the customer, and everything started just kind of spiraling in a great way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Solidifying as well in a great way.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like there's and I know you sold your gym before AI really started to take huge effect, and now it's like exploding. I'm seeing this trend in the industry right now where people are relying a little bit too much on AI, getting away from the customer service. And so, how do you see how do you see with the experiences that you had and what your future journey looks like, AI kind of playing a role within the studio environment?
Mm. Well, I absolutely think it has a place. You know, it's one of those things that I'm not like sort of against any sort of technology or you know, new things. I guess that's out there on the market. And you know, obviously AI has kind of been around for a little bit, but it's really starting to blow up now, like you mentioned. I see it as a tool, as just as one of many, a very powerful tool at that. And I, you know, quite honestly believe that in conjunction with a caring business owner or a caring studio owner or a caring caring employee, it can become a really powerful weapon to grow your business and also keep customers. I don't necessarily believe, depending on your type of business or studio or gym or whatever you have, that it will entirely replace a lot of things. But I do believe that, again, it will help. But the person who's behind everything definitely needs to still maintain that caring connection. People seek connection, and the gym is one of those places where it's like they call it your third space. Probably people have heard about this. They call it other things, but it's you have your house, you have your job, and then you have this other third space, right?
Mhm.
That other third space can be like a club, or it could be, whatever it is where you connect with people. And the gym is very often, especially my business, it was a place where everybody connected. And
Mhm.
for that to sort of be in an automated fashion or an AI fashion would take away some of that care.
Mhm.
And, again, it's hard to determine these days because AI is getting so good. But I mean, the smile and the handshake and the high five as you see this person cannot be replicated, right?
Yeah.
And you can't fake it, right? And you have to still show that care and concern for your customer, whether it's a text or a phone call, and again, those are tools that you could use AI for, no doubt. Um, but, with an in-person business that my business was, it mattered a lot to interface and interact with the customer. And that was a human being connection.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and that's funny enough, I think we have to kinda look back to move forward a little bit.
mm,
I think that, I'll use and just use this example recently, on another cast, the retail market, for instance. You look at Amazon and everyone said, "Hey, retail's gonna be dead," and you're starting to see a lot of the adaptation of experience within these large, retail centers at malls and things of that nature where it's like, "Hey, you go here, we have a restaurant, we're selling bikes, we're selling this, we have a Ferris wheel, we have a place where you can buy furniture." And I'm not saying you have to go full service at your studio, but what I'm saying is like they are providing something that the online atmosphere is not, which is an experience. And I think community and building a connection with people involves a lot of that experience. And it could come down to something as simple as instead of sending out an email to say happy birthday, you have a trigger that sets forth with AI for the trainer to say, hey, this person's in your class today and it's his birthday. So go up to him personally and say happy birthday to him in the class because that provides that one-on-one connection more so than the common email thread that goes out that just says happy birthday that everyone sees now.
yeah, exactly. Absolutely. And I think that's a good way of, just like you mentioned, using those processes or those technology tools to make the experience better, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we have triggers that say, um, whether it's AI or just systems in general, right? That say that's this person's birthday. Cool. Well, that triggers the person who's responsible to write them a note and a happy birthday card, and we mail it to them, you
Mhm.
know, as opposed to a automated text or a automated email, right? It triggers the human process just as much.
Well, and I think too, just going back to what you were talking about with AI and having that personal experience, something that the smaller studios have that a lot of these big box, you see a lot of studios come in and be like, I can't compete with, these large big box studios. I don't know what to do, and it's like you're not supposed to compete with them. You're supposed to not going to say compliment, but you're supposed to differentiate yourself from them. And something these big box studios don't really have is accountability.
Mhm.
It's volume based. It's meant to say, come in, have an experience by yourself, which is great for some. But
Mhm.
as you are aware, accountability is a huge accountability, especially in the boutique studio and that personal experience is what separates from the big box. And so being able to come in and really be able to say, hey, like our differentiating factor is that accountability? Is that we have someone there that can be there for you, not just on at the studio, but maybe you're at home and you're having a bad workout, that you're just having a day where you're fatigued and you don't really want to work out. Being able to have an accountability coach and be like, hey, what's wrong with you today? Do we need to pivot if you're doing personal training, for instance, or semi-personal, are you pivoting that to the next day workout or things of that nature? And I think that that's what people are wanting and craving these days because we're all behind a computer.
So true. Yeah, and I think it's understanding the unique yeah, your unique sales proposition, I call it the USP. That was always kind of at the forefront of our discussions on monthly, quarterly meeting bases. Again, making sure that what we were offering was, like you mentioned, not as necessarily a competition to the big box, because there are so many things that big box just provides that we're just not in the business of, right? Like, it's convenient. It has an amazing amenities. What it didn't have was, like you said, the accountability factor or the care factor or the community factor. And it was, a very personalized touch. And I think gym owners still need to maintain their USP and put it at the forefront of their discussions and what they're trying to achieve, because it can create a lot of problems and in their marketing as they go forward. Because what they're trying to do is they're trying to attain or attract a customer that really is not the type of customer that is wanting what you offer, right? The customer who wants to go in at 2 a.m., for example, at the 24-hour fitness gym and do their own program is not my customer. I mean, I would love to have them, but I have to understand that, I'm not going to market that as something that I'm looking to, like, attract. I want to attract the people that will see the value.
Yeah. And funny enough, I think that goes back to what I preach a lot, which is putting a larger emphasis on branding. I look at value development, leadership development, all that stuff. It's basically branding practices in a nutshell. And I think that really having an understanding of like moving away from, hey, we provide everything for everyone. I mean, how many studio owners I talk to that are like, hey, we focus on 16-year-olds all the way to 50-year-olds, male and female. I'm like, okay, it makes sense when you're starting to go a little broader so that you can start to build your systems, understand certain things. But there is a point when you need to be like, hey, who is our ideal member? Like, how we can only bring the best customer service, best accountability to a certain type of individual. And so when you start to preach out certain things and attract, and I think that's a huge one, attract the right type of people. Um, you're probably going to be doing that through understanding your mission and your vision and allowing the team to adapt those branding principles to be able to attract the right audience. And then the sales process is easier, right? Because then you're already putting them through a process. They understand what they want, they understand what they need, and they're like, hey, I'm all for this.
Mm, absolutely. I think a big part of that was a big moment for us when we started actually marketing. We didn't identify the right type of customer, and we didn't explicitly state that to the company that we were working with, right? And so we sort of got this huge net thrown out there of, hey, this is who we're marketing to. This is the dollars we're going to spend. And we just ended up spinning our wheels and making our internal staff just very frustrated with everything, because we were not getting those types of people that we were really looking for. And that's a big problem.
Well, and I think I love how you said that because I own a marketing agency, and you say who is that? Who is to blame for that? Would it be you? Would it be you and your team? Would it be the marketing agency? And of course, I always say it's both ends. The marketing agency should have kind of came in and said, hey, like, well, if you really want to market, we need to identify who your target audience is, or you're going to be throwing dollars at a wall until something sticks. Uh,
Mhm.
and you, on the other note, should have, been able to go in and be like, figure out, oh, this is our target audience. Like, let's do this. And I think that's a common misconception. Not to get off topic here, but that's a common misconception around when you bring in a marketing agency. Remember, the marketing agency is supposed to help leverage what you've already kind of developed and created to get you in front of the right audience. And just diminish those man hours to help you not think. But you still have to, as an entrepreneur or visionary, sit down and give yourself that space and time to work with the team and the culture to be able to develop that stuff, or have an agency that works with you on that to kind of get you through that process.
Yep. And the one that we ended up working with was not necessarily working with us to identify that certain person. I mean, we knew it after the fact, but they had their own template in which they thought that was the best thing for us.
Mhm.
Right, and they did it with their messaging and their, type of copy and their type of photos and videos or whatever you wanna call it, right? And they had this thing that was a kind of a proof of concept for them, but
Mhm.
it really was not personalized for what we were looking for. And that just, again, it created a problem. But it was on us too. Like I take full responsibility for not developing the customer that we needed to have in the gym.
Well, and back to what you were saying with learning, right? Like I see this all the time, right? Like usually, especially in this industry, and I love to dive into this a little bit since we're on the call.
Mm.
Um, the different types of agencies that you've seen throughout, because I come at it from the expert of the marketer, right? Like I see, hey, you have these, and it's not your fault for not understanding marketing agencies. That's not what you do. That's not what
Yeah,
you're in. But understanding that there's different size and different experiences of marketing agencies, and in this industry right now, you see it all the time. Hey, we have a system and a template that works on Facebook. Let's just take that and we'll give it all to you, and that's what will work. Pay us, and um, it doesn't matter if they're niche, doesn't matter if not, but every studio is gonna be different, and you want to be different because that's what's separate, especially right now. You wanna be separate from the saturation of all the other competitors out there.
truth. Very, very true. Yeah, exactly. And that is it's a good thing to find someone that understands that, and it gives you that opportunity to, like you mentioned, do the things that you're not strong at. And that's why we hire experts like marketing companies or whoever, sales professionals.
Mhm.
They give us the enlightenment to go forward and be better.
I like to look at it as outside perspective. I was talking to another studio owner the other day, and we were kinda having a conversation, and I just told them, I'm like, "I own a marketing agency, and I hire a marketing agency to do our own stuff." Like, I could do it all myself, but I can't, and when you're in it so much and you just have so much more passion for what you do, you need that, like you said earlier, you need that outside perspective of different people, if they're in industry or not, because it helps unrelease that emotional tie to some of those things that you may be like, "No, this is how we're doing it, this is what I want," when in reality, it's like, maybe it isn't what's gonna work.
Sure. And it's same thing with myself. Like as I was a business owner. I was an athletic person. I did all these things. I would hire an athletic coach to do my stuff for my athletic stuff, but I also I was a business coach as well. So I hired a business coach and I was a business coach, and I needed a person also to, coaches need coaches, business owners need other business owners need other experts. And it just allows us to continually be better and be pushed, just like in anything,
Mhm.
especially in business. It's easy for us to coach a lot of people, but lit we always forget that, look, we also need to be coached. We need to be coached in areas that we're just not strong at, and those are things that, I've learned over the years that, again, I coached hundreds of business owners across the world, and it made me also a better coach. It made me also a better business owner because I would help these other people, and it would make me realize I'm not doing these things either. So I needed to improve myself in order to improve myself to be better at that service, So again, coaches need coaches, business owners need business owners, people helping people.
What I hear from this whole conversation so far is and I came up with this the other day, and I probably heard it somewhere, I'm not 100% sure, but chaos breeds, clarification, So like, understanding that the chaos, there's gonna be chaos, being able to let go of control and allow the chaos to breed that simplicity, and that organization is gonna be something that I think, we all have to embrace, because every business owner I talk to is the same thing. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's not just this magical bullet that gets you to 1,000,000 to, like, get you to sell. You're gonna have to test, you're gonna have to spend money. Hopefully, a coach or bringing in someone with operations helps you make less risky mistakes, or spend a lot less on those mistakes than normal, but, I think that's always gonna be there, and we're all just gonna have to embrace that, hey, like, this is part of the growth cycle of any business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it takes it takes time and money to accelerate. I should say, I should rephrase that. It takes money to when you hire someone to accelerate the process, right? To hire a coach costs money, but that person is going to help accelerate everything. It's
Yeah.
going to help you grow quicker. It's going to get you from A to B quicker, right? It's just what journey do you want to take for yourself? Do you want to take A to B a little slower, or do you want to go A to B a little faster? And
Mhm.
with other people in those processes and those things that go inside that A to B, like it'll accelerate it if you do it right.
let's finish off the cast by talking a little bit about the towards the end of your tenure at your studio. Like, what was your kind of deciding factor of like, hey, I want to sell this? To me, that's more courage than it is, copping out, because it's hard to, especially once you build something up so much, to be able to be like, hey, I'm ready to sell, or do I expand? So kind of tell me, give me through a little bit of your thought process and your journey through that selling process. So any other studio owner that's like, hey, I eventually want to sell this thing, kind of has an idea of, I'm not gonna say the steps they can take, but some of the mental clarity that they're gonna have to go through to get there.
Yeah, it was a long decision of back and forth, obviously, internally with just what am I looking for in the next phase of my life. For me, it was, COVID was that turning point for myself where I was leading it up to COVID in a great way, and it was the business was doing wonderful, and then COVID sort of took all of those goals that I had for myself and just knocked them out. Right, it just took everything off the table again. But leading up to 2020, for me personally, was I either said, I'm going to either expand this thing or I'm going to sell it. And I came to that conclude. I did that internal dialogue up to 2020 with, and I came to the conclusion that I wanted to go. I wanted to go hard. I wanted to expand. I wanted a location of my business within 10 to 15 minutes of every spot in this city.
Mhm.
And there was that huge 10-year vision that I laid out a couple of years prior to 2020, that I had on the table. I had a whole thing leading up to it, and everything came to full halt. And after that, 2020, it was just, let's just get this thing back to operations, right? Like, let's not get this thing. I don't want this thing to be shut down because of this thing. I want to grow it back to what I know it could have been, right? And so the last 4 years, from 2020 to 2024, I was grinding hard just as much as I was in the very beginning, although a little differently, because it wasn't systems, it wasn't people, it was just delivering the service excellently every single day. And that eventually led to revigoration of the business to get back to where it was prior to 2020. But in that process, inside my brain was, I'm starting to fall a lot of love with the thing, with growing my business, the gym business specifically. The environment and the customer changed drastically in 2020, and it became much more difficult and a little bit different, and something that I didn't really like as much. And I started to not like things more than I liked things. And I started to get to that point in my head where I'm like, this is not where I foresee my business or myself. And it's not fair to the customer. It's not fair to my employees to make this decision because I'm sorry, to continue forward if I'm going to not enjoy it and love it. And there's a mentor of mine that said, it's either hell yes or hell no. And it's like, I was leaning on the more of the hell no stuff. And I think it came to that point where I asked the person who I sold it to, who was my head coach in my business. She and I had those discussions, and I told her about it. And I said, look, I'm thinking about this thing. It might not be right now because I'm still building this thing up, but I just want to let you know I'm possibly willing to entertain this. And she said, cool. Obviously, right now is not a good time, and we'll talk about it. So as time went on, we things started to become better. She started to realize that. She started to become also interested in expanding her career and what she wanted to do. And the business of running a business again for her, she ran one prior. She wanted to start it and she wanted to take it on. So we had those discussions, talked about everything, all the details and things, and we came to the conclusion to sell. So I think it all lined up perfectly. I had those thoughts, she had those desires, and it worked out really well.
So yeah, I think that that's just proof that even if you're gonna sell, like, you had to have your financials in place, you had to have the structure in place. You still had to create the system. So anyone out there thinking, "Hey, I'm just gonna sell this thing," just put a little cautious to the wind. You're probably not gonna make as much if you don't get your financials in order. And so you probably had and the fact that you even, contemplated the sell showed that you were, like, "Hey, I'm kind of committing." I hear all the time, like, you need to have a goal in mind and realize, "Hey, are you gonna sell? Or are you gonna expand?" And so you gave yourself a couple of years to get all that priority and all that stuff in place so that you could sell properly and probably make a good chunk change to what you're doing now. And so why don't you explain to everyone, like, now that you're out, did you take a hiatus? Did you take like a year off? And what are the kind of thought process? I know you talked to me before about you guys kind of feeling out what you want to do next, but have you got any thought processes on the types of direction you want to go? Are you going to stay in the studio space? Are you going to fitness space? I know it's hard to get out of, but what are you planning on doing now?
Well, like, kind of like when I talked about in the very beginning of this conversation, yeah, I love coaching. I love people. It's always been a part of me. I think just the combination of it all just started to kind of add up a little bit, which allowed for a very successful sale. Um, you know, I'm very glad I did what I did. I'm glad I'm out though as well. It was one of those I don't want to regret it situations, and as 1 year has now passed, I have not regretted it because I think all these internal thoughts and conversations and discussing things with my wife, discussing things with my buyer, you know, it allowed us to sort of set the table for sort of what's to come, and it got all the fears and it got all the things out there in the open. But because I sold it last year, and I had a business coach that and a mentor of mine that said, "Hey, look, don't do anything for the next 6 months minimum." It gave me the freedom to say I don't need to push on right away. It gave me the freedom to say, let me just sit back a bit and let my afterburners cool down. Because when you're a business owner, gym owner, what I don't care, any owner, you're grinding, right? You are going hard, and it's very emotional and physically draining. And so I just needed that permission, so to speak, to say, all right, let's just relax a little bit for the next 6 months and then figure out what's going on. Well, 6 months has now turned into a year because I've sort of busied myself with some things in the family side. So I've been doing more of like coaching my daughter's basketball team, and I still do a lot of corporate training. I still do a lot of private training. So those sort of things have just gave me the scratch the itch, so to speak, still without feeling like I needed to have to rush into the next thing. And I'm still enjoying it right now. I'm enjoying not having to do anything inside my business or a business, excuse me. And it gives me the freedom to make decisions on the fly. And I'm really enjoying this right now because I've never been able to do that for the last 14 years of running my business. And so that's kind of where I sit right now. I have the ability to pick and choose what I want to do. I have the freedom to go hard. I have the freedom to relax. And I'm kind of looking for just and being selective with the opportunities that present themselves and come my way.
I think that's beautiful because I think that the one thing that as any entrepreneur has is that concept of, especially for anyone going into wanting to become an entrepreneur, I think understanding that's where I'm not gonna say trap, but that's everyone's like, it's freedom," but I think that that's the mindset that we all tend to fall into is how hard do we push? How much we have to pay employees, we have to pay rent, we have to bring in clients, we have to serve, and being able to take what I would call more of a lifestyle business, which it sounds like you're kind of in right now as you're kind of thinking about that next step, is that it's okay. It's okay. You don't have to follow the trends of, hey, if you're gonna don't make it to $1 million tomorrow, you're gonna die. Like, it's okay to stay home with your family. It's okay to do a basketball game. It's okay to do a podcast because you enjoy it. Speak because you enjoy it, without necessarily feeling like you have to have the grind. So I give you courage and I give you props for allowing yourself to do that because I know it's a very hard thing for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Yeah, it takes a lot of there's mental gymnastics that you go back and forth. Sometimes I think I should be working harder right now, or I should be sacrificing a little bit more right now. But I think back to what my mentor said, and he's just like, it's you've worked your butt off for so long. Give yourself permission, you know, and our businesses are meant to serve us, right? What in whatever capacity that is, could be financially, could be with your time, where it gives you more time to spend on the things that you really want to spend time on. I mean, it's not meant to consume you, and I think that's an important aspect to running a business and having an entrepreneur to say, what is this thing doing for us and doing for my family or doing for me, and making sure that it lines up with that.
Yeah, man. Proud of you. Proud of you. No, we barely know each other, but I'm proud of you. It's a hard thing to do. I've contemplated that myself multiple times. When you have the and I think it's funny because I think a lot of people a lot of people are like, "Hey, I just need to get safe with money. I just need to get safe with money." And then you get to a point where you're then safe with money, and then you're like, "Oh, well, all that certain stuff that was pushing me before is no longer pushing me now." And so you have to realize that it's not necessarily the money that was pushing you, it was the vision and the goals. And so trying to trying to define that. And so it was a real pleasure having you on. A real pleasure having you on. I know we're talking after this to talk about having you on further, on more episodes. And so, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where they can find you, and yeah, we'll leave those down in the comments below.
Sure. I'm still everything's available on the socials, of course, Tyler Sullivan, or my Instagram is BCF Tyler. I'm still found in my gym in Milwaukee, and I'm there often, still training clients and having fun and intermingling with the people. And so, yeah, I mean, if you want to reach out to me, Tyler at badgercrossfit.com, and I'm available for anything.
But thanks for jumping on this cast. This is another episode of the Fit the Grit cast with Zach Coleman, and I hope you all have a good day.